He is the chosen one. You must see it.
I gave Qui-Gon my word.
Is he the chosen one?
He is.
And it is the Jedi who will stand in the way of peace.
It's not whether or not we fight.
It's how we choose to fight that matters.
I am a Jedi, like my father before me.
The Force will be with you, always.
I will not be the last Jedi.
You're listening to The World Between Worlds, a Star Wars podcast where we have been marathoning all of Star Wars, and we're at Revenge of the Sith. In fact, we're still talking about Revenge of the Sith. Sith, as we had talked about, is stuffed full of plot, world building, vital information, seeds for storylines that are going to pay off for the original trilogy. Let's get into it, and let us, of course, not forget that this is the end of the Clone Wars as well. Not just the show, but literally the Clone War itself is done in this movie, and it's an important part of the plot.
The Separatists have been taking care of my master.
It is finished, then. You have restored peace and justice to the galaxy.
Yeah, technically Anakin ended the Clone War.
Anakin does end the Clone War. He kills the entire Separatist leadership. Every single
all the
person.
Droids.
Yep, all the droids are shut off. The entire infrastructure for the Separatists as we know it is gone by the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Okay, why is the Clone Wars done? Because then in movie in the future that...
You mean Solo?
Yes, like there's still war going on. And instead of clones, there are people in stormtrooper suits. So that's not the Clone Wars because the war was won. But now it's just like, what's that war called? Like the never-ending
it's not
imperial.
A war. Yeah, it's not a war. It's just
colonizing.
Society.
Just wondering what our objective is, Lieutenant.
Bring peace and prosperity to the galaxy. Install a regime loyal to the Emperor and eradicate the hostiles.
It's their planet. We're the hostiles.
You got a problem, Trooper?
No problem, sir.
Jess, what do you think happens to all of these separatists like after the end of the Republic?
That's a good question. I don't think it matters anymore in a way, but I also feel like maybe they get special favors, but I think that everybody just gets fucked. Yeah. And I think that like then they'll realize like there's no point to this. You can't negotiate with evil. You're not going to get any special favors. Like everyone will be fucked in the end.
The problem with the separatists is like the separatists we see in the movies are just bad people. Like I am not sad.
You're saying we cannot be the bad guys any longer?
I'm not sad that Viceroy Gunray is dead. I mean, I love the Viceroy, but
what happened to him?
Anakin kills him.
All right.
He could
This isn't how it's supposed to be.
That's good.
Good. Bye.
You kidnapped my wife when she was 12.
Yeah, that's true. The conflict as it existed is over, not to mention the fact that the Separatists were basically, their whole goal was to try and create a new society counter to the Republic or adjacent to the Republic. And the Empire, that is not going to fly even a little bit. And, oh, no. I think there are still probably Separatists out there that still had general grievances with the Republic as a whole when it was the Republic and continued over into the Empire as the Empire. And those people may continue to struggle against the Empire or may also continue to seed the notion of a future rebellion.
Like who?
Wat Tambor. He was a very political person. No, so Cassian Andor's from a separatist planet. Lux
Bonteri.
I didn't want to say it because then it would seem like I was trying to set it up.
I'll say it for you.
Thank you.
Lux will continue the struggle.
I feel like it's like for the average person, like anarchy and survival. Mm-hmm. And then
bounty hunting. If you pick a side in Star Wars and that side falls, then you're automatically a bounty hunter from then on.
That's true.
Yeah, like, does anyone have a normal life? Does anyone have a good life?
Like
Jordan, I would.
What would a good life look like?
Well, I think a good life.
I'd be like,
I mean,
milking cows, like space cows, and selling their milk.
Assuming that the Empire never needed your planet for resources, sure, you could probably do that. But then I think the good life is, the people that are rich on Coruscant and like all
Probably
the rich
not,
planets.
though, because then they have to like oppress people and like work with crime syndicates, right?
I don't think so. I think in order for the Empire to work, there's got to be like a rich, privileged class that enjoys their
Yeah, we
life.
see them on Canto Bay.
Someone out there is enjoying their life. Do they have a good life? Like, are they leading a good moral life? Like perhaps Obi-Wan Kenobi? No. But are they leading a life that is probably fulfilling to them, like some rich fat cats on Coruscant? I think yes. I think there is still like a ruling privileged class that has benefited from the Empire.
Okay, there's definitely 100% a ruling privileged class. No doubt about that. Absolutely. But are they having a good life? It's not even about morality. It's about stress. Like, in my view, like, I think we have a good life. As much as, like, stressors as we have, I think a good life is, like, about
family, friends.
And also, like, freedom. Anakin or Luke might have a pretty peaceful life, but they don't have any freedom to see the galaxy. Like, we have freedom to go, like, see things and make choices. Granted, we don't have as much freedom as we should have, and a lot of people don't have freedom.
I feel like there's got to be characters out in there that believed that the Empire was the right move.
Yeah,
that didn't step out of line enough to feel like the imminent threat of death, or like other like stressors like pushing them towards something.
Don't we see that in Rogue One with the Ersos? Like, they seem like pretty content with their life on Coruscant.
It just seems that after the Clone Wars is over, you have to like live your life in fear. Because everything can be taken from you.
That's only people who don't believe in the Empire, though. I feel like there's lots of people that believe in it. I mean, like Padme says, like, so this is how liberty dies. And, like, everyone's like, yeah, everyone's like super chill with it.
But those are all of the people who are in power.
Yeah, so there you go.
That's what I'm saying. I think those people, for the most part, I mean, I think
until they see.
I think
what the
some of them.
Empire
I think
is.
some of them get weeded out, and some of them get squeamish when there start to be some serious human
Jessica
rights
means, like,
violations.
common folk.
Yeah, I mean, like the average.
The people who
person.
are most likely to be oppressed. Are there any oppressors?
No, it gets
average
worse.
People, what are their reaction to this? Like all this shit happening.
Maybe there's like fascist believers out there that are like, yeah, this is cool.
There definitely
there has to
and
be.
maybe they own like a cantina and they're content.
Yeah, I can answer your question with this, which is just that we're gonna get that specific point of view mostly through Star Wars Rebels within the first season
that's
or
so
two.
Exciting to me. I'm so happy. But I also think that like there are people, I guess, like you see people all throughout the series who are just like, I don't buy into any of this like good and evil shit. Like,
yeah, definitely.
I just have like solidarity with like people like me, and life's a struggle, and I'm just like
like
fuck
Cad
it
Bane,
all.
like Empire Republic. It's a different name. Like Cad Bane doesn't care about like whatever. And this
Life
is something.
Shit before, life's shit now.
Yeah, and this is something we said about not just sort of the more despicable characters like Cad Bane, but I think we said that maybe about Uncle Ono in Bombad Jedi, where Uncle Ono was just like, hey, listen, whether it's the Republic or the Separatists, like, I need to, like, eat, and so that's why I'm choosing with the Separatists. They're going to give my people food. Like, I don't care about the sides or, like, the politics. I just care about what my people need, stuff like that.
But see, that's an interesting example because the reason that he was in that position in the first place was because of the war.
Right.
Where you get the sense that before the war, like his planet was like doing okay. Like they were like peaceful. True. They were like having like normal lives. Like it was stabilized. Mm-hmm. And now like there's famine.
Well,
so
I mean,
that's what like pushes him into that position.
Okay, so I mean,
then like in that example, there are channels, like there are like governmental channels that he can appeal to.
Right, that's what like Padme and I think even Bail Organa and Jar Jar. That's like what they're there to like help do.
Yeah, it's just like those channels are failing, so that's why he's turning to like the bad guys. But now there's like just the bad guys.
Right.
And that's basically the bad guys just seem like the mafia and like the fascists
Yeah.
army.
Yeah, no, definitely.
So in some deleted scenes, we get like early looks at the rebellion being formed. You know, we see like Mon Mothma and Padme.
We cannot continue debating about this any longer. We have decided to do what we can to stop it. Senator Mon Mothma and I are putting together an organization.
Say no more, Senator. I understand. At this point, some things are better left unsaid.
Agreed.
But yeah, I think this should have been in the movie.
Yeah,
How
I
do you
mean,
feel?
absolutely. I
What
feel
should
like
have been in the movie?
the Rebel Alliance being formed and Padme being an active part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like it's so important just to know, like,
Because otherwise you don't know that there's a Rebel Alliance. Like, when does that come about?
And also a great moment. They say, "Oh, we can't like tell anybody about this," and then Padme brings up like, "What about a Jedi? Like one we can trust?" She's obviously talking about Anakin, and they're like, "No, like we can't. You can't tell anybody." And then she like agrees to that. That would have been good moment for Padme's character and would be true to like how she was like in the Clone Wars and stuff.
Yeah.
Like taking action.
I mean, I just love seeing Bail and Padme together always feels good because obviously Bail is Leia's actual, you know, like
Been together.
father.
Bail and Padme.
Yeah, Padme and Bail, they're
He's married.
yeah, but
Bail Organa is like the prototype for Leia in a way. I mean, he's her model figure, and it sucks we don't get to see that relationship really fully fleshed out. I know Keats loves the Leia Princess of Alderaan book.
Favorite.
But I love the Bail that we get in this movie. I mean, we've talked before about the Senate. There's like the select few people that you can trust, and I really love the scene. It's the end of the Order 66 sequence where just Bail Organa is like the Good Samaritan, and he just sees the whole temple on fire. He's like driving right up to the front door. Like, I'm driving right up and I'm gonna ask what the fuck is going on.
What's going on here?
There's been a rebellion, sir. Don't worry, the situation is under control. I'm sorry, sir. It's time for you to leave.
And so it is.
What is happening? Like, he just says it like plainly, and he just sees the clones killing kids, and he is just like, that is it. He's just the guy that says, no way, I'm calling Yoda, I'm starting the Rebel Alliance, not tomorrow, right now, and we're going to stop this right now.
Bail's a great character.
I just love that there's one, he's not an average Joe because he's technically like a king of a planet, but he's just like the one guy that's there that's like, I'm doing something right now. I'm not waiting for permission. Let's go and do something.
he's a good guy.
We're going to have to wait a long time to see like other people step up to the plate in the way that he does. But even though they cut out the rebellion story from the movie, which again would have been really nice, would have been great to see Padme as it feels so obvious that Padme, of course, is like involved in some way in the formation of the rebellion.
For sure.
But just to have Bail be like the one person in the story that's like, that is like a good Samaritan, that is in the wrong place at the wrong time, that does all the right things.
They could have totally trimmed down the opening sequence or something.
And put more room in for the rebellion.
Yeah,
definitely. You're right.
That was all empty. Action adventure story.
So, one of my most fond memories about watching Revenge of the Sith is I think it had been like close to a year or maybe 2 years since I had seen Revenge of the Sith, and one of my
This was after Force Awakens came out.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good thing to mention. Is just like Force Awakens came out, all the hype was off of like the new movie and then like the prequel bashing, and so like then it was just like, oh, I haven't seen Revenge of the Sith in a long time, and everyone was just like in mutual agreement to like, hey, let's just put it on and see what we think about it. But little did I know that was just like code for let's bash this fucking movie. And then like they put it on, and then the opening sequence starts, and I'm just like so like immersed in it. And then both of them are just like, I don't care about any of this. This is so boring. And then I was just like so furious that after I got home, I watched it again with Yates just so I could like watch it again and enjoy it.
Oh my God. Yeah, no, Keith just, I think it was like, I was also leaving to go to school like the next day. And it was like, you came back at 12 o'clock and you're like, Yates, I just had the most terrible experience. Do you want to watch Revenge of the Sith with me? And I was like, yeah, sure. Let's do it. let's go. Let's do it. I think we stayed up till like 3 a.m, and then I had to leave for the plane like 3 hours later.
It was just like me screaming like nonstop. Just there's nothing wrong with this. There's nothing wrong with this. good bad times.
So the beginning very much feels like a classic Clone Wars setup thing. I think even when we were watching, Jessica was reading the opening crawl, Chancellor Palpatine has been kidnapped, and she was just like, this is a Clone Wars episode. And that's...
I was like, this bitch again? Seriously?
My issue with the sequence is that his fingers weren't as long as they were before.
Continuity error. What's up with that?
So one thing, we talked about it in the part 1, but I wanted to give it a little more space, was, this is the end of our favorite jolly bearded man, Count Dooku. Count Dooku dies at the very beginning of the movie. It's the culmination of this prologue. It's an important moment for Anakin, but I also wanted to take the time to really just sort of talk about Count Dooku and the end of his story.
Did Count Dooku ever really have a good story? I don't feel like I can even think of a definitive Count Dooku story.
There isn't a definitive Count Dooku story. You're right. I mean, I think the Yoda arc had the best Count Dooku stuff. Yeah, there's a new book that was announced that I'm excited about.
I think it's fucked up by that witch lady.
Oh yeah, that's true.
No?
Yeah. Mother tells him.
The Ventress.
Yeah, I like
the Ventress thing with Count Dooku.
Yeah,
was cool.
that was important. That was important. Count Dooku was an important part of that. Yeah.
Your assassin. She has become very powerful.
Yes, my lord. She is quite important to me.
Too important.
Master.
Silence. I can sense her powers growing stronger. I would hate to think you are training your own Sith apprentice to destroy me.
Never. My allegiance is to you and you alone.
Then you must prove it. Eliminate her.
She's my most trusted...
I said, eliminate her!
Ventress feels so far away.
Ventress is very far away. Jordan, speaking of that, this is important. Dark Disciple. When Clone Wars was canceled, that was a book that was released with unfinished materials, and that is, sort of critical arc for a couple characters, Asajj Ventress, Quinlan Vos,
Count Dooku.
And Count Dooku. So would you mind talking a bit about Count Dooku's story in that?
We get some cool Count Dooku stuff. I mean, most of it's just him training Vos. We see him gain another apprentice because, he kicks out Ventress and he gains Vos as an apprentice in the book.
And it's cool because that's actually, that's really a direct adaptation with some key changes of a story that was in the comics where Quinlan Vos became Count Dooku's apprentice. So here's the thing I was gonna lead into that is, so Count Dooku he's an older guy. Anakin's a younger guy. Count Dooku has failed at many critical junctures, and he's being tested by Palpatine constantly. This is the way of the Sith. In Dark Disciple, Count Dooku trains Quinlan Vos to be a Sith.
Behind Palpatine's back.
I didn't know that. Behind Palpatine's back.
Yeah, because in one scene, he talks to him in recording, and then I think Palpatine's like, "Who the fuck was that?" And he's like, "Oh, just my new apprentice." And Palpatine's like, "What?"
That's really cool. And of course, Quinlan Vos is like, "What's up?"
Yeah, what's up, bro?
So Count Dooku trains this new apprentice, and Quinlan Vos does what Anakin and Obi-Wan could not do this whole time. Quinlan Vos defeats Count Dooku in a fight, and also chooses to spare his life because he doesn't want to give in to the dark side.
Yeah.
Count Dooku loses hardcore a few months before Revenge of the Sith. In Sidious's eyes, I feel like that was probably the moment where he was like, I'm not just secretly thinking about killing Count Dooku, I'm gonna get rid of this guy immediately because this guy sucks.
I think Palpatine's kind of not fucking with Dooku the entire time in the book. I mean, he's only in a couple scenes, but Count Dooku. We see a little bit more into his political life rather than him just fighting Obi-Wan and Anakin every second. There was one moment that I really loved where he's speaking at an award ceremony and he's just bashing the Jedi. And I think he makes some really valid points, and I hate myself for agreeing with him. He talks about how the Separatists use droids and the Republic use organics, and how that's kind of fucked up. And I was like, damn, dude, you make a valid point.
So in the previous episode, the series finale for Clone Wars, Yoda and the Jedi Council discover that the Sith are in some way involved in the creation of the clone army, and basically their response to that is, let us try and complete the war as quickly as possible and beat the Sith at their own game. And there was a lot of back and forth in terms of like, how does that affect this movie, and how does that make the Jedi seem dumb? Me definitely at the beginning of this, I mean, I definitely felt like it was conveyed in the sense that the Jedi are super anxious in this, and they're sort of ready to take more extreme steps to sort of be on top of the complex political situation that's happening in the movie.
Yeah, I never thought about it for a single second. They was all like pretty directly about Palpatine. I don't think they ever once like addressed anything clone related.
Well, of course not. They were never going to.
But they should. If it was real concern, they would have talked about it.
So how do you think it should have been more directly addressed then?
I mean, like when Obi-Wan and Anakin were having that conversation about treason and spying on the Chancellor, like that could have been a reason that they brought up.
That's a good point.
I mean,
and the chips as well. I mean, yeah, Order 66 is really like the turning point of the whole movie. I mean, the turning point is, there's a turning point in Anakin's story, but it's immediately followed up by Order 66. And I guess they could have foreshadowed it directly in the movie, like through like the plot. Just say, like, drop little hints like, oh, do we trust the clones? Like, the clones are acting weird. What's going on? But we don't get anything like that. I'm hoping we get something like that in season 7. But
it all comes down to poor writing. Like,
I was thinking about it more and more, and I think that Star Wars is kind of made of like two separate fields, and one of them is like the Jedi and Sith, like the mystical stuff, and then there's like the grounded warfare stuff. And it kind of mixed both the worlds, and it didn't do a successful blending of it.
What didn't do a successful blending of it?
The Yoda arc, when it introduced like the Cypher DS clone sabotage stuff. You guys were insinuating that, or implying that it probably had to do with like the starting off point for Yoda's whole vision quest, but then in the end, he basically says we can't solve the problem, so we might as well just forget that there is a problem, which is like a big issue I have in the writing, because I don't think that was a necessarily good choice of writing that. And even in this situation where they do drop the problem and it's still for some reason part of their anxiety and the Revenge of the Sith, I think that's even more like kind of convoluted if they're like still worrying about it and dropping the problem at the same time.
But they dropped it because the galaxy would go in chaos if they do that. If that news went out.
Well, the way I see it is that they almost sort of like accelerate their plans, because like when you think about it, the Jedi go from just doing whatever Palpatine says to the Jedi are like, it's time to take Palpatine out of office. And before they even know he's the Sith Lord, Ki-Adi-Mundi is like, if he doesn't surrender his powers, we have the authority to arrest him and remove him from office. Like, and that's just what we will have to do. And that's before they even know he's the Sith Lord, before any of that happens. I think they are being extra cautious and moving quickly, trying to fulfill the promise that Yoda said, which I think was the wrong choice. I think he made a mistake in making this, but just saying, let's move as quickly as possible so that the plans don't come to completion. And they almost succeed.
What you just said is like so much going on at once.
Well, what was intense about what I said?
Just that Yoda made the wrong call on the decision, but also at the same time, it's like still an active problem that they have, but that is like in the background of everything they're talking about, but we don't get to see it. And just like how, that should be a problem that we get to see like on screen, if they are talking about it. And I don't think they are talking about it. Yeah, Yoda does say we have to accelerate as quickly as possible. And it's like, why would you want to do that? It's like when you want to like investigate or like, inspect the chips or something like that, or like pull a recall of like a specific batch or anything.
I think they're too deep, man. They're in too deep.
Well,
why are they too deep?
Here's the thing: is I think Revenge of the Sith, the clone betrayal, worked before there was microchips. I think that story beat pays off, and I think the Order 66 sequence is very effective. When I watched it in the theater, even without like the clone chip story backing it up.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, the clone chip story provides a lot of really cool context and enhances the story, and it makes a lot more logical sense. So, with that removed, again, I'm hoping in season 7 we can see a parallel clone story where we can see that story like interweave. I think there's space for.
They're gonna ignore it, just like Mortis.
I honestly wouldn't be surprised.
I think you're wrong, because I think the whole climax of season 7 is going to be Order 66. I mean, that's like what the whole Clone War is about. is just that moment. That's what everything has been leading to. That's that is the express purpose of the Clone Army.
I hope they let us down. It's all Jar Jar story. He just goes on an adventure with different Jedi each arc.
Okay, so in between the Clone Army being over and then the Stormtroopers, we never get to see that transition.
No, we don't.
So when, like, are there any materials or ideas about how that happens? Like, what do they do with the clones? Do they kill them?
No, they become stormtroopers. The ones that are left.
I think they're gradually phased. They're gradually phased out.
So they're like half clones and half humans.
Yeah, I mean, I think that another thing you gotta remember is that the clones have accelerated growth rates. So like the clones that are like
growth rates.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, I don't think they ever mentioned that.
That's not true. They mentioned it in episode 2, and they mention it.
Oh.
So I guess they all just die off, but they can't make more because that planet won't work with them anymore.
Well, they stop production.
Well, I think that's like an interesting parallel.
They don't need clones anymore.
We've talked. Well, they don't need clones, but like the clones have been proven to be super effective, right? I mean, we know.
But the only reason they made them was for Order 66 to happen.
That's
true. And now he wants to control the society of the galaxy.
But even in Force Awakens, like Kylo Ren says, this is like a viable option. He's like, yeah, Clone Army worked before. Like, no reason not to use it now.
Foreshadowing.
How capable are your soldiers, General?
I won't have you question my methods.
They're obviously skilled at committing high treason. Perhaps Leader Snoke should consider using a clone army.
My men are exceptionally trained, programmed from birth.
I could totally see that happening, that he like creates another clone army
of himself.
To answer your question directly, Jessica, I think we brought it up many times before. There's a weird dynamic where the stormtroopers, we know the original movies, they're like grossly inefficient. They all suck at their job. Like stormtroopers are not threatening at all. Clones, they're like the same person. Like you'd think they would be like.
You can manipulate them easier.
Yeah, and the clones are like really loyal, critical thinkers, and like way stronger and better soldiers.
I think you have to look at it from a financial perspective.
Yeah.
I feel like it's cheaper to pay people than to produce clones. All the financial spendings are going to like the Death Star and raiding planets for like their metal ores or whatever.
That makes the money.
Yeah.
That's why they're spending money
like building
on
Star Destroyers and TIE Fighters.
Well, I think the main thing though is that one planet that made the clones thought that they were working with the Jedi.
And then it turns out
that they were working for
I'm
definitely curious what happened to them.
Did they kill them all or something?
I don't think so. I think they're too valuable to kill. Like so I'm sure Empire has a stranglehold over that.
One of the things that the Camino guy said that got me really intrigued was like he was like, the clone army that we built is one of the best we've ever built. So I'm like wondering about like his history in terms of like
what else did they build?
Yeah, what else?
Yeah,
what other armies?
That's true. I would love to.
That's I think that concept is so cool. Just like, yeah, we're in the business of making armies from scratch, and that's how we make money, and it's pretty sweet. We're really good at it.
You know what that reminds me of?
Yeah, it's fucking really intense sci-fi concept. The question of what happens to the clones after everything that happens in the movie. There are also some really quick shots, I mean, in the movie where the clones survey the dead Wookiees. Did they kill the Wookiees? What happened there? There's a one clip where, like, after Obi-Wan's killed General Grievous, they're rounding up all the indigenous people of that planet. It's, like, literally one shot, but the clones are, like, rounding the people up.
I don't think they killed the Wookiees because they needed them to enslave them to build the Death Star.
Yeah, well, I mean...
I love the Wookiees, and I feel so bad for them.
I know. So this is a small anecdote, and it'll give you a little insight into you, the listener, into what my process is like. But there was a period way back. I was editing the 10th episode of the podcast. It was the Ryloth arc with Sham Syndulla and the Twi'leks and Waxer and Boyle, the two clones that meet the young girl. I had to edit that, and we were at Universal Studios. And so it reached a point in the day where I'm like, I've been on too many rides and I have so many more hours of podcast to edit. So I got to dip. So Keats is out enjoying roller coasters with his girlfriend, and I am sitting at the Starbucks outside of Universal Studios editing the podcast by myself. So I'm sitting there and I'm editing a particular point where Keats made a point where he was talking about how Waxer and Boyle, these two clones, learn in a very short amount of time how to develop empathy for this young girl who's been sort of like, her family's been lost and she's lost in the middle of the village. And Keats said a line like, the characters of Boyle and Waxer are like the perfect polar opposites to see like the both extremes of how they can handle that situation. And obviously, you know, good trumps over evil.
Don't cry, kid. We'll keep you safe. I promise.
And I started crying in the Starbucks at Universal Studios, thinking about afterwards the clones, they do stay, but they stay to enslave like all these planets that they have like spread out through across the story. And like that is like our perspective at that point in time in the story. Like, yeah, of course we want the clones to win and we want the clones to like be around because the clones are good people. And then but in actuality, like they
enslaved that planet.
Yeah, they destroy. I mean, we will see Ryloth in the future. Ryloth is fucking dunzo. And so are, you know, all the other planets that were caught up in that.
They reversed all the work that they did.
Yeah, or all the work that they did was always that to begin with. I mean, aren't the clones like naive about the realities of war? Like every moment we get close,
sad.
Every moment we get close with them, like that arc, that particular episode with Waxer and Boyle, I really liked as like a highlight of season 1. And then the Deserter episode where Rex is sort of challenged on like, are you programmed to like make all these excuses for like the Republic? Are you programmed to ignore like your morality? And he's like, no, I choose to believe in the Republic.
But does he have Stockholm Syndrome?
Perhaps he does. I love the clones. I mean, that was consistently, I think what I got the most out of watching Clone Wars this time was the clones are awesome. And they're all of them had, not all of them, but most of them had really strong moments to shine. And I loved following them over the course of the show. How do we feel Revenge of the Sith serves overall as a series finale to the Clone Wars? How did it satisfy that? Because that's basically what it was. It was all the plot threads coming together.
It was near perfect, solid 80%. I would have loved Ahsoka stuff in Revenge of the Sith,
and clones.
I'm sure everyone, and more clone stuff because you know they feel so detached from like the clone characters in the show. But of course, this like came before all that, so we didn't get none of that. That'd probably be my only.
It's kind of crazy because it's almost like, what if there's like this like universal war about good and evil, and like evil won?
Yeah.
Like that's a crazy concept.
Yeah, the prequels told the story where everyone dies at the end, and it's open-ended, but it's an open ending that's like everyone is in a worse place than they started off.
Maybe
like that's like a very crazy like just notion to like, I'm gonna tell 3 movies and it starts off as a children's movie and then it ends with everyone dies, and it's really fucked up.
It's amazing to like have a story that is all about heroes and it feels so heroic, but it's actually all about defeat.
Yeah, definitely.
But it doesn't feel like it's about defeat, and I think that's what's so cool about it is like it's always hopeful.
Yeah, Obi-Wan and Yoda right after everything goes bad, he's like, well, plan time to, you know, meeting on the mound, like let's figure out what we're gonna do for the next 30 years.
That was the end. That was the end of the Yoda arc.
Yeah.
And they win.
Yeah. And they do win. Yeah.
And the entire time we feel like they're gonna win.
Well, the entire time we know as viewers are gonna win.
Right.
So it's kind of a little bit of bias.
But I think it's just a testament also to how much we love the characters. Because if it was like a character, if there were characters that we didn't like, we'd be like, you know what? I just wish Yoda would just lose already. Like,
or we would be like, this is so unbelievable. Never in a million years would they ever win.
But we love them.
But instead, we're like, yeah, hell yeah, Obi-Wan and Yoda are gonna rise from these motherfucking ashes.
Like they've lost everything, but of course they're gonna win. Yeah.
Fuck yeah, these kids are like these little babies are gonna like save the universe. Like this is gonna work.
Qui-Gon might have doomed the universe for choosing the chosen one, but hell yeah, come back as a ghost. I want to see you.
Yeah, you're right.
We missed you.
It felt less like the end of the Clone Wars and more like the end of like Anakin's story arc, which we already know how it's going to end.
Yeah,
we just
true.
don't know how it's going to end. But that's why the next movie, Solo, is so amazing because which we're gonna get to later. But it felt like that was really showing this is what happens. Like
Right.
this is what the world looks. This is what the universe looks like when. Like the Nazis take over the universe,
Right.
and like this is how people deal with that.
Freedom fighters.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like, I didn't think the Revenge of the Sith really felt tethered to Clone Wars at all. I feel like Clone Wars kind of just had an endpoint, and then Revenge of the Sith is kind of just like, and here's like the aftermath.
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, I agree for the most part. Although I think my ultimate goal is like if in season 7 of Clone Wars, like what I would love is just like the perfect companion piece to this movie. Like just like something that's like closes all of like the loose ends that we don't get to see from the Clone Wars, and also expand on this story a little bit and show it through the eyes of the other characters like Ahsoka and Rex,
Yeah, like
and Darth Maul, and you know,
What would that movie look like?
I don't know.
Animated.
Really good. 4K.
We'll see at the end of the year.
This is Jessica.
This is Yates.
This is Keats.
This is Jordan.
This is Yates.
This is Jessica.
This is Yates.
This is Jordan.
This is Jessica.
This is Yates.
This is Star Wars.
You see why we're doing this? It's because we don't want this lovely story to end, and we've had such a great time.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
Change.